Welcome and thank you for joining us for our weekly object talk. My name is Eliana and I'm a member of the learning team at the Jewish Museum. Today you are joining us for an object talk on a Megillah, or a scroll containing the story of Esther, and it was made in the 18th century. And this object talk is in celebration of the festival of Purim, which is later this month on the 16th, 17th of March. This object is one of over 40,000 objects in the Jewish Museum London designated collection that shows the diversity of Jewish life and history, and our programmes exist to explore connections between faiths and cultures. So I'm now going to share my screen so that we can have a look at the object. Now, this object is a Megillah from our collection and is in fact on display in our galleries. A Megillah is a scroll usually written on parchment on which the biblical book of Esther is written and read from on the festival of Purim. This Megillah was made in the 18th century, although unfortunately we don't know who the artist was. When we look closely at the object, we can see beautiful coloured illustrations in Rococo style of art. And this suggests that this object was made in northern Italy. If we were to unravel this Megillah, we would find it would be 65 centimetres in length, and it would contain 17 columns of Hebrew text. Surrounding the text, there are arches decorated with garlands and twisted columns. We can see at the top of one column of text the depiction of the figure of justice. The clue is that this figure is holding some scales, an object which often symbolises justice. In this case, this figure symbolises the idea of justice as an example of an allegorical illustration. Therefore, we might conclude that the part of the story that this figure of justice is referring to is a part of the Purim story whereby justice is being served. A Megillah, unlike a Torah, is free to be illustrated because God's name is not mentioned in the text. If we look at the bottom of the columns of text, we can see illustrated scenes that portray different parts of the Purim story. For example, the scene on the left shows King Ahasuerus walking outside his palace. In this image, we can see that this scroll is on a roller. This particular one is made out of ivory and is in fact part of a group of 6 Megillot, plural of Megillah, which are all similarly decorated and held in various collections around the world. The story of Purim took place 2,400 years ago. It tells the story of how Queen Esther and her cousin Mordecai saved the Jewish people from persecution by Haman. It takes place in the context of the Persian Empire in 4th century BCE, which extended over 127 lands, within which there were many Jewish communities that fell under this empire. The story begins with King Ahasuerus having his current queen, Vashti, executed for not following his orders, and then commencing to find a new queen. A Jewish girl caught his eye and became his next queen, Queen Esther. Queen Esther kept her Jewishness a secret. Haman was the prime minister to King Ahasuerus. Haman managed to persuade the king to order the destruction of the Jewish people after Mordecai, the leader of the Jewish people, refused to bow down to him. He set a date by drawing lots. The date was 13th of Adar, which is the Jewish month, which is why the name of this festival is literally called Lots in ancient Persian. Haman's plan became known to Mordecai, and he proceeded to organise the Jewish people to repent, fast, and pray to God. Meanwhile, Esther invited the king and Haman to join her for 2 consecutive banquets, and at the second, she revealed her Jewish identity and asked for her and her people's lives to be spared. King Ahasuerus accepted her request, and Haman was sent to the gallows, and Mordecai became the new prime minister. A new decree was issued, which granted the Jewish people's permission to defend themselves against their enemies, which proved to be successful. And on the 14th of the Jewish month of Adar, the Jewish people rested and celebrated. And today, on the 14th of Adar, all over the world, Jewish people will celebrate the festival of Purim. It is traditional for Jewish people to hear the Megillah being read aloud. In fact, it's a religious obligation to hear it on the evening when Purim begins, and then again the next day. It is customary to boo and make lots of noise and play the Gregor when Haman's name is mentioned in the story. And this is to drown out the name of Haman, and the idea of which comes from the Torah, from Deuteronomy 25:19, which says, "You shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven." And Haman was a descendant of Amalek. Here is a wooden Gregor from our collection. It was made in the 1920s. If we look closely at it, we can see some Hebrew writing in the top right-hand corner. It says Arur Haman, which means cursed be Haman. When this instrument is played, it makes a very loud, sharp sound. On Purim, it's also traditional to dress up in fancy dress. This symbolizes a couple of things. One is that God's name is never mentioned in the story, but is present and therefore hidden. And two, that Queen Esther also hid her own identity. Other customs on Purim include performing the mitzvah of tzedakah, otherwise translated as giving to charity, and also sending gifts to people, such as food baskets called mishloach manot. We must also not forget about the traditional food eaten during this holiday. On Purim, Jewish people eat triangular-shaped pastries called hamantaschen, and they're often filled with poppy seeds. This is the most traditional filling, but others also include chocolate jam and other sweet fillings as well. Now, there are lots of different ideas and thoughts on the symbolism of hamantaschen, of which I shall mention a few. Now, this image is of some hamantaschen made by a member of staff here at the Jewish Museum. Now, one interpretation of hamantaschen is that they represent the three-cornered hat that Haman was thought to wear, as told by legend. And these pastries are often thought to symbolize something that is hidden, as the filling is hidden in the dough. This follows the theme of why we might dress up on Purim, but in this case, interpreting this further, that it symbolizes the fact that God may not be mentioned openly, but that miracles are more concealed within the story. On this theme as well, we have another interpretation. So that it is said that Mordechai would send hidden messages in pastries to the Jewish people to convey the seriousness of Haman's plan. And we also mustn't forget to mention the custom of celebrating, so much so that adult members of congregations may get quite merry. Now, although Purim is very fun and a joyous holiday for the whole family, and there is definitely something for everyone. And if you celebrate Purim, I hope that lots of us are able to celebrate together after not being able to over the last couple of years, and we're able to enjoy the customs of the holiday. Thank you so much for listening to this object talk, and please do join us again next month for another talk on an object from the collection. And we'd like to wish you happy Purim from all of us here at the Jewish Museum London. Goodbye now.